Some people go to music festivals 2 or 3 times a year, and that's great.
Yeah.
But there's a big percentage of us that go as often as possible to escape our own realities because we're seeking community, we're seeking connection. Sprinkling an element of drugs, there is the illusion of connection. And so when we're coming down off the high of the festival, it can add to feelings of being alone and having no one until the next festival. We're going through a spiritual renaissance, but at the same time, we're being over-programmed and conditioned to consume and watch more than we ever have. Social media paints a picture of everyone's living a wonderful life and everyone's on the stage or backstage or in the DJ booth or on the jet, or everything's wonderful, everything's crazy, everything's great, and that's not really relatable. The majority of us might be feeling anxiety or fear or self-doubt or depression, and all we see is how wonderful everyone's life is, and it pushes you further away. True suicide prevention is listening and being quiet and not giving advice. My goal is to have a positive impact on 1 million lives before September 29th, 2029.
Welcome to Path to Alignment with Hungry Yogi. My name is Natalie, your host. I'm a trauma-informed life alignment coach, yoga teacher, and retreat facilitator. If you made it here, you are ready to awaken parts of your soul that have been waiting to be unleashed. We will cover any and all aspects of the human experience. We get open and vulnerable about life and cover the shadows of life as well as the light. I'm so grateful that your soul found its way here. And if you would like to go deeper into your personal development journey, book a free 30-minute alignment call with me to learn about having me as your personal life coach. All the links to learn about my offerings are in the description. Without further ado, let's get aligned. Hello, Joshua. Welcome to Path to Alignment.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Okay, so as we're starting the podcast right now, I'll just preface that we've been talking for like 2 hours already. So the podcast had already begun, but we're just like cutting halfway through and starting. So Joshua, I'm going to introduce you just from my knowledge of you. And I want you to just add in anything new about yourself that you've discovered. And just, I feel like we're always building and growing on who we are. So I might be even giving information that may no longer resonate fully with you. So let's see.
Yeah, that's
Ready?
okay. I'm open. I'm a blank canvas.
Love it. Okay. All right. So we have Joshua Donaldson on the podcast today. And Joshua is, first of all, a Shetty certified coach, which is super cool. And I'm going to tell you why I find like that to be the coolest thing ever in a little bit. Because Shetty like saved my life and is what got me into my spiritual journey, actually. And he's the founder of an amazing organization called When the Music Stops. When the Music Stops is a nonprofit community that supports emotional, mental health, and spiritual health through music, connection, and love, with a mission to understand and prevent suicides. So I met you, Joshua, on Groove Cruise, and for anyone who doesn't know what Groove Cruise is, it's like an electronic music festival on a cruise. And this was my second Groove Cruise. So I got to see you talking on a little panel, and I was immediately magnetized to you because, first of all, the way you spoke, and I saw a lot of myself in you, because I feel like when I go into these music spaces, it's hard for me to find anybody that I can like fully relate to on this level. I love music, and music has been a journey for me because I used to do drugs and I used to drink so much, and music was kind of my escape. Now it's more like it's just a healing thing for me. So when I saw you at this cruise talking about mental health and all these things that you're doing, it was just like oh my gosh, this is a thing. Like, it's possible to have someone like this on this cruise and people resonate with this. And this is just so beautiful. So you've done talks on Groove Cruise as well as other festivals and just like summits. I was creeping your Instagram like hardcore and like just finding out all these different things about you and where you've spoken and just your journey. So I know you were very open about talking about your own struggles with mental health, which is what got you into what you do now, which is with life coaching and with When the Music Stops, as well as suicide prevention, because you've had your own situation and experience with that, which I would love for you to just like talk about. So Joshua, I would love for you to just share a little bit about yourself, just like how you got to this very moment of being a life coach and when the music stops. I know that's like the most loaded question ever, but
No, it's okay. This is great. So I'm from Seattle, Washington originally, and I grew up, not to date myself, but I grew up I was in high school in the 90s when Alice in Chains and Nirvana and Soundgarden and Pearl Jam were all really popular. And I was in the rave scene, and I wasn't into drugs, but I was a drinker, and I was really drawn to music and performers and artists and DJs. And so straight out of high school, I started tour managing with a really well-known rave DJ back in the 90s, and he's still well-known, by the name of Donald. And he was much years my senior. And I by the time I was 20, 21 years old, we'd already been to a dozen or 24 countries around the world together working on music. And so I've wore many hats in the music realm, from touring with electronic artists to managing them, to managing hip hop artists, to managing hip hop DJs. And I became what is known as a talent buyer, which is somebody who programs music for venues or festivals, and who finds new up and coming acts or finds DJs or bands or any of these things. And then being a talent buyer is, there's more now than ever before, but 20 years ago, there was only a few handfuls, and, maybe 30 or 40 in the United States. And it's a very niche thing to do. Now it's more popular. I would constantly go to festivals and try to find who's next, what artist or what band or what DJ or what producer should I work with, or should I book? Where is the trends going? You need to be ahead of the curve rather than following trends. As a talent buyer, I felt that a calling to be ahead. Where is the sound going? Where is music going next? Where is it going to be? And there's a very small window. There's a thin line between following a trend and setting a trend. And I don't want to say that I was setting trends, but it was definitely on the pulse of booking some artists at the cusp, or right before they got popular, and that's what makes a good talent buyer. And I did that for a long time.
Nice. Wow. Okay. That's amazing. And so, okay, I want to ask you about when the music stops and like what got you inspired to create that. There's this saying about how our suffering leads to our passion. And I love that so much because whenever I say that to people, they're like, oh my gosh, yes, like that is how I started my business, or that's why I did this. Like, that's why I ended up here doing a podcast and being a sound healer and a yoga instructor, because there was all these things that were like literally drowning me, and you have to come out of it somehow. And then it creates this beautiful thing. So I would love for you to speak about what inspired you to start When the Music Stops.
Yeah, I'd be honored to. So, trigger warning, I'm going to mention suicide.
Yeah, no, please.
If it bothers anybody, you can pause or turn off or fast forward. But I was in music for 20, 25 years. I'm Scottish and Irish. I've drank since I was like 15, high functioning, so I could hold successful positions while still also drinking. Experimented with drugs later in life, super late, and I ended up in January 2019 having a psychotic breakdown while I was on vacation at a music festival in Costa Rica. And I took the next flight to Miami, and I attempted to take my life in a violent way. Not to discredit how anyone's purpose or their method of how they try to take their life. That's not what I'm trying to do here. But the way that I did it was very extreme, and I survived, and here I am. And it was nothing short of a miracle. And I started the journey of putting myself back together. So I was in Florida, and because of how extreme the event was. They took away my rights at the time, and they told my family they couldn't take me out of the state. And so it was time to find me care inside of the state of Florida. Due to how extreme the situation was, a lot of facilities wouldn't take me because of liability purposes. And there was a facility that took me in West Palm Beach, Florida, small male-only facility, 14 men. It's very heartbreaking. It's 2024 now, and 4 of them that I know have passed away. 5 weeks into my treatment, my roommate passed away. So, in the recovery, mental health, suicide world, there's a lot of lives that are lost. And it's hard. It's, surviving is a tough thing. Initially, I came up with an idea of a podcast called When the Music Stops. And I didn't know that had ever been used before. Apparently it was an Eminem song. I had never heard that. And I got all the trademarks for it. So I got the trademarks and the websites and all the fun things for When the Music Stops. And I wanted to create initially a podcast of artists to tell their struggles and tell their journeys, because I thought maybe it could be a point of inspiration. Because social media paints a picture of everyone's living a wonderful life, and everyone's on the stage or backstage or in the DJ booth or on the jet, or everything's wonderful, everything's crazy, everything's great. And that's not really relatable. The majority of us might be feeling anxiety or fear or self-doubt or depression, and all we see is how wonderful everyone's life is, and it creates it pushes you further away. So I had this idea. This is before the pandemic, 2019, to come up with a podcast where artists could come on and tell their journeys, their truths, and say, hey, yeah, I had the #1 album, or I'm the #1 electronic artist, but I also struggle with anxiety or depression, or I'm insecure, and I was getting ready to build that, and I started interviewing a whole bunch of artists that came forward that wanted, to tell their stories. A lot of big artists wanted to tell their stories. And then I started thinking, wait a minute, what about the kids? What about the clubbers? What about the groovers? What about the dancers? What about the attendees? What about the people in the crowd that love the music? What about their stories? Who's going to tell their stories? And then I started going, wait a second. Oh my goodness. We can't just only tell one side of the story. We got to help everybody. And music festivals are a place where we come together, and a lot of people have attached their identities to those. Yeah. So maybe, maybe your Instagram account is, I'm just going to be arbitrary right now. Use an example. Tommy the Unicorn. Maybe you have 42,000 followers, and every time you go to a festival, there's a meetup, and 100 of your followers can meet with you, and you can shuffle together, and you can dance, and it's like the greatest night of your life. Yeah. But then on Monday, maybe you're struggling with your sexual identity. Maybe you're struggling with bullying. Maybe you're struggling with abuse. Maybe there's all these things going on. So I asked myself, what happens when the music stops? Not just for the artist, but what happens for the music stops for the attendee? And some people go to music festivals 2 or 3 times a year, and that's great. Yeah. But there's a big percentage of us that go as often as possible to escape our own realities, because we're seeking community, we're seeking connection, the music, the people, everything. And then when you sprinkle in an element of drugs, and I'm abstinent and sober, but I don't have judgment on anyone's journey. Right. But when you sprinkle in the drugs, sometimes there is genuine connection, and other times there is the illusion of connection. And so when we're coming down off the high of the festival, it can add, and I don't just mean depletion of serotonin, but it can add to feelings of being alone and having no one until the next festival. And so you can be struggling with depression, anxiety, fear, insecurity, identity disorders, all of these things, and feel alone and like unheard, even if you have 42,000 Instagram followers and you're just like, And so I started I did a competitive analysis on the mental health and suicide prevention space. And I started thinking about other nonprofits, and, an incredible journalist asked me once if When the Music Stops existed independently of me, would it have prevented my suicide attempt?
Ooh.
And that was one of the most powerful things anyone's ever asked me. Now,
Wow.
without going that far, in 2019, I was thinking, if everybody is doing suicide prevention and mental health this way, what's the opposite look like? How do we create something where we're incorporating music and community and connection and DJs and performers and singers and creating spaces and containers that foster genuine connection and genuine community? And I was like, wait a minute, this is a nonprofit. Like, this is more than that. And so I founded When the Music Stops. We got our 501c3. And I took the gloves off. And then the pandemic hit. So the pandemic hit officially. So When the Music Stops was created in March as an idea, March 2019. It was a podcast idea for 6 months. And I was interviewing all these shows. And then in January of 2020, it was, we are a nonprofit. This is what we are. We're a community that, of love and a container for mental health and a safe space for suicidal thoughts. And then pandemic hit. And everyone was like, is the world going to end? What is happening? And all of a sudden, music stopped. The music did stop. And
literally, wow.
People stopped touring. Musicians and artists thought that their identity was gone. Music lovers felt like maybe the world was going to end. In those first few months, we didn't know what was going to happen, if we were ever going to go back to normal. It was really scary. And I started seeing people having nervous breakdowns, just like I had the year before, but all across the country. Instagram Live, Twitch, anywhere where there's live streaming. I couldn't go 2 days without seeing somebody having a breakdown, live. And so I was like, how do I reach these people? How do I help people that are in their homes? I partnered with Beatport. We did a live streaming event, global. We did 36 hours, Beatport and When the Music Stops. We did a 36-hour live streaming event. It was not a fundraiser. It was strictly about community and connection. We had talks and speakers. We reached, I think it was around 2.5 million people around the world. That was a beautiful thing. And then I used machine learning and artificial intelligence programs to send out messages that say everything's going to be okay to people's Instagrams. I wrote a paper on it, but people would message me and say, how did you know I was going to take my life today? And I don't know that, but the way that I targeted my ads with no call to action. So I wasn't asking you for money or a follow or your email, nothing. I went against ClickFunnels and all this stuff. All I did was targeted people that love music and maybe were struggling with mental health. And I just sent a message that said, everything's going to be okay, or you're not alone. And my account went from 1 follower to 50,000. And then I was asked to speak in Tulum, and then I was asked to speak in Nashville. And we started going to all these places. And as parts of the country opened up, just as important as it was to have a digital presence for suicide prevention and mental health, it was also equally important to me, I'm a Libra, the balance to have a physical presence as well. So as music festivals in 2021 started popping up around the country, different places, they would contact us or we'd contact them, and we'd have containers there. And initially I thought that it was going to be people saying, oh, I want to hurt myself. So that's not what happens. It's an interesting thing. I can identify patterns. So online, email, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Telegram, people will send me messages like, I want to hurt myself today, or I'm thinking about doing something. But in person, it's 80 to 90% people that lost someone that want to give you a hug because they lost their daughter or their sister or their father or their brother or their uncle or their best friend. So in person, it was completely the opposite. It was people running up to you saying, thank you, I just lost somebody. And then online, it was, I want to take my life. So there's these two different sides of the community, or the conversation, if you will, where each equally important, because this is a supercharged area of this conversation, but there's a lot of pain and confusion left behind after somebody dies by suicide, especially if they don't leave a note, which I didn't, and a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
And it leaves a lot of pain and trauma and grief and confusion. And so there is that container that needs love and connection and community. And then there's those that want to take their lives or are struggling with their identity or community or feeling alone. Maybe it's not even suicide. Maybe it's, I just feel alone.
Yeah.
Fast forward, I ended up volunteering. I got out of treatment and I volunteered in treatment centers for 1.5 years. Treatment centers, detoxes. I worked with people from the ages of 18 to 65, all genders, all different orientations, all different walks of life, all different things, whether it was suicide attempts or drug overdoses, heroin, Oxycontin, all these things. And again, I see things in patterns. So I started thinking, well, what does somebody who is 60, who is an alcoholic millionaire, have in common with somebody who's 18 from East Virginia, who is struggling with opioid addiction? And what I found was around 75% of the time, out of working with thousands of people in 1.5 years, it was the common denominator was feeling unheard. So going through life feeling unheard by spouses, partners, siblings, family, parents, significant others, peers, friends, employers, coworkers. Going through life feeling unheard can lead to escapism, alcoholism, sometimes sex addiction, but like all these different things, because we're craving connection, we're craving to be heard. And we live in a very, I don't like to identify it as a superficial world, but media leans to push us towards superficial things often. And so, it's easier to say to somebody, hey, what did you watch on Netflix last night? Rather than, how are you feeling?
Right.
And so as soon as I found that this was the common pattern, I realized it didn't matter what I said, that I could be quiet and listen. And if I could be quiet and listen, and that was how I found true suicide prevention, because true suicide prevention is listening and being quiet and not giving advice. And that was a really hard lesson that I had to learn, to be honest. I wanted to jump in and give my opinion like I'm doing right now, but true suicide prevention is holding space.
Oh my gosh. Wow. One thing that is like ringing in my mind that you said, that's so interesting, how in the like digital side, the online side, there was the people that were messaging you saying like, I want to hurt myself today. But then on the other end, like in person, people were just like, thank you. Like, oh my gosh, like a family member died and I'm so appreciative of what you're doing. And it makes so much sense. Like I'm just imagining it, visualizing it, because I've been suicidal in my life too. And the times that I was in that, if I would have ever reached out to somebody for help, it would have been through like messaging like that. Like I would have probably been like, I want to hurt myself. Like if I had seen something on Instagram when the music stops, like I probably would have been like, I want to hurt myself. I need help. But even to get to that point of asking for help is like so much for someone that is having suicidal thoughts. Like that in itself is like one in a million people would actually reach out for that type of help, because when you're in that dark place, like you don't even want to say it to anybody. There's so much shame around it. You don't want anybody to know. And I'm just thinking of myself, like, I don't think I would have put myself in a place like, and at a, like when the music stops conference or something, if I was like super suicidal, I probably would have been alone in my room or going to do drugs and drink and continue to numb. So it just makes so much sense when you look at it from that perspective. So to create spaces that do still have the music and do still have the community aspect, that's probably where I would have gone if I was suicidal, where there is more like music and stuff that's actually still making me feel this like illusion of like, okay, it's still kind of a party. It's still an environment where I'm connecting with others. But wow.
Escaping your pain.
Yeah. Escaping my pain.
And you're absolutely correct. There's obviously hotlines, and now you can text and things like that. But Instagram is a intimate thing, and people see Instagram. This is going to sound so wild, but people register Instagram as a safe place. You go there to laugh, you go there for
Yeah.
entertainment, you go there for inspiration, you go there to connect with friends and family. It's this safe place that we all meet at. And the way that the conversation starts most often with people that are trying to hurt themselves is yo, or hello, or hi, or an emoji.
Yeah.
And it's not I want to hurt myself. It's, is anyone there? Is
Right. Like, is
anyone
someone here to
listening?
hear me? Yeah.
Is anyone listening? And yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on that stuff, but yeah.
Wow. I just think it's so beautiful how whenever, like, I truly believe like the universe, God, whatever you want to believe in your life, puts these things in a particular person's hands. Like literally put you in a place where you were suicidal, where you did something to yourself, for you to be able to understand like what somebody else could even feel like. Like this was something that was given to you. Like it was like your divine assignment that you had to like do something with, and you freaking did something with it. And that is so magical.
I appreciate you saying that, because I struggled with that for the first few years because I didn't understand why. And I know now that the why, first of all, I'll never know why, but I'm not supposed to.
Yeah.
It's either turn your pain into purpose and take action, because I was shown death in a very extreme way, and it didn't work. I wasn't allowed to. And I didn't, without giving away too many details, I did what I was supposed to do. The police, the ambulance, the doctors, the surgeons, they were like, oh, you're not supposed to be here, but you are.
Wow.
So you're not allowed to leave, whatever that means. And the first few years, I really struggled with why me. And the hardest part for me, and this one, nobody taught me how to have energetic boundaries and how to not attach emotionally to every suicide.
I
So
was going to ask you that. Yeah.
yeah. And what was the hardest for me, the soul crushing ones for me, were either somebody who was in suicide prevention who took their lives, which happens pretty often. Those ones were really hard on me. And there's one specific that I'm thinking about, but I won't talk
Yeah.
about. And then the other ones are children, between the ages of 8 and 14. There's a lot of those. And I don't want this podcast to focus strictly on this. I don't want to, I don't have an agenda, but I don't want
Yeah.
to suck the energy out of viewers or anyone.
I don't, I, please
I
don't
get
even think
nervous,
that. Don't even think that. I think this is
but
so like,
we'll,
it's
but
important to
so
talk about this. to me.
I was, I was all in on this for 4.5 years. And so I've talked with ER nurses in major cities that are like, her average age is 8, and I'm like, and I don't understand why an 8-year-old can complete their event and I'm not allowed to, and I used to struggle with that. Now I don't. I let that go and I just be. I do what I can and move forward. I keep going. It's not up to me to look at or question why or why not. But for the first couple of years, I did, because and it's some form, I suppose, of survivor's guilt. I'm not really sure how that works. Why am I alive and they're not, kind of a thing.
Right.
But if I focus all my energy on that, then I can't focus my energy on helping people. Where we're at now is we did a lot of great things in a lot of great places. And shout out to Jason and the Groove Cruise for really wanting when the music stops on the boat every year. But I didn't leave any energy for myself. So I had a lot of energy and a big personality, and I gave it all to others for 4 years. And I gave energetically, I gave spiritually, I gave physically, I gave financially, until I had all of those cups were empty. And not only were they empty, they were past empty. Negative drawn in spiritual energy and physical energy and everything. And then it leaves you in a dark place, but also knowing, well, suicide's not the answer. So what next? And I had to refine my path. And what does it look like to be able to help people, but also pay your bills? What does it look like to be able to make a living and also do pro bono work or volunteer and do all of these things? And, it's a poor way of putting it would be understanding and identifying a work-life balance. But I suppose that's what it is. And last year in 2023, I went through I lost my last surviving parent, and went through a very important transition in my living space. And I ended up spending last summer working on homeless housing in Las Vegas for 2.5 months with a beautiful organization out there called Caridad and Hebron Housing. And I worked with them for 2.5 months, and it allowed me the space to help people, but also it didn't have the immediate emotional connection that I did to mental health and suicide prevention. And yet I found mental health and suicide prevention while working with the unhoused. And it was a really beautiful thing to be able to understand what is a step further than feeding the homeless that you could do. And most of us don't think that far, not in a bad way, but just, you think, oh, I'm going to go work with the Salvation Army for Christmas and I'm going to feed, but what goes beyond that is, how does an organization help somebody who's out of the system for 5 years or on the streets or homeless get back into the system? Because you need to have an ID in order to get an ID. You need to have an address in order to get an ID. You need to have, all of these things. And it's really difficult to get back into the system once you've been out of it. It's extremely difficult. And then how do you take somebody who's lived on the streets for 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 years and help them get a job? And how do you convince an employer to take a shot on them? And then how do you help them transition from a fight or flight 24-hour survival mechanism into things are going to be okay? And I got to show up for work every day, and I got to take care of myself and brush my teeth and take a shower and all these things. And, these habits that we let go of, in the process of losing your home and everything. So I spent 2.5 months doing that. And it was so healing for me, because I wasn't in the executive director facility or capacity. I was just there. I was just there to do whatever. to like help make meals or work at the front desk, or, I got to take some homeless men to, Walmart or stores to buy work clothes or work boots or get ready for interviews. And like, it was just such beautiful
Wow.
work. And then after that, in this time period, I have been, it's an unbelievable story, but I've been life coaching for an artist, a DJ, who met me on the Groove Cruise, and she was like, "Are you a coach?" And I was like, "No." And she was like, "You should be my life coach." And I was like, "Okay." And she was like, "Let me explain to you why." And I was like, "Why?" And she said, "I've worked with therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists, clinicians, counselors, and none of them understand me. I might be at an after hours trying to connect with a promoter to further my career, and they might all see that as toxic behavior. But maybe you don't, or you wouldn't." And I was like, "Oh, wow." I was like, "Oh, okay." And so we started working together, and it was beautiful. And so I'm doing homeless housing, I'm doing life coaching. I still can't really afford the basic needs of living because I gave everything to my nonprofit, which I don't regret. And I was in this transition period, and then I see an ad for the Jay Shetty life coaching school, and I'd looked into coaching certificates and certifications, and some of them felt really kind of dry and corporate for me. So I was like, but I love Jay Shetty, so I was like, wait a minute, I'll take his course. It was so hard. 6 months, 300 hours, like it was. And I hadn't been in school since, the 90s. So I had to relearn like cohorts and study groups and homework. And like, I can do those things, but like at this time, and then pop quizzes, and like, it was like a lot. I didn't think I thought I was going to fail. I didn't. I graduated, and it was amazing. And it allowed me the space to, the Jay Shetty certification is incredible, but it's more about taking 6 months and 300 hours and learning from the best, all the tactics and techniques, and then learning how to listen and and taking what I already know about people being unheard and taking it a step further. Jay Shetty teaches you how to empower them without giving them the answers. So I'm great at giving people what I think the answers are, but how do you, just like I said earlier in suicide prevention, how do you listen and not give advice? Life coaching is the same thing. How do I listen to you and guide you to your own answers and see you as whole and complete?
Yep. That is so beautiful. And it's true. I mean, as coaches and just as intuitive people, usually you see what's going on really clearly. Like if somebody's telling you what's happening, like it's very clear, like this is what you need to do, this. But that's not going to get somebody anywhere if you just give them the answers, because we're all in this place of finding the answers, right? Like me 10 years ago when I was drinking and doing drugs, I knew in the back of my mind, like, this is probably not what I should be doing. Like there's this, we all know deep down, like what we should and shouldn't be doing. But there's this really big part of us that doesn't allow us to actually see it until somebody else can kind of like help you explore, like, okay, look, we're going to find the answer. It's like really deep inside of you, but you already know it, what you're supposed to be doing. You just have to like get all this shit out of the way so that you can open that up so you can see what's in front of you. So I love that. And I wanted to ask you, in your Jay Shetty schooling, what would you say is something you learned about yourself? Like one of the main things that you learned about you? Because I know those courses like rip you open apart and make you have to find out who you are all over again.
In my testimonial video for being a graduate, I said the Jay Shetty certification course in school is life-changing. And even if I don't coach one single person, it changed my life.
Yeah.
And which I didn't think was possible, because I've done the retreats. I've done 2,000 plus hours of therapy. I've done 40 hours a week of therapy. I've done, intensive therapies and one-on-one therapy and group therapy and music therapy and art therapy and all the fun stuff. And so I didn't think that there was more breakthroughs to happen. Boy, was I wrong. The breakthroughs are happening, as we talked about, on $30 courses on New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
But so one of the days, so to answer your question but to be a little vague, not because I mean to, but one of the days I was doing the homework for one of the courses, one of the modules, and they're very good at putting the magnifying glass on you, or helping you put the magnifying glass on you in order to get you ready for putting the magnifying glass on others, or helping them put the magnifying glass on themselves.
Yeah.
And so I remember it. The question was something along the lines of, think of a time in your life when you felt unappreciated in a work environment or in a relationship. What did that make you feel like? I start writing. Then, now, where do you think that came from? What is the root of that, right? And this isn't Freud, this isn't psychoanalysis. Where is that coming from? All of a sudden, I'm sitting here, all of a sudden, it just clicks. I start writing and writing and writing and writing and writing for hours, and I just saw all the patterns of all of these employers, these toxic, narcissistic, abusive employers that I've had in my career over 20 years in Las Vegas and all this stuff, and all these things that were happening, and then what I was seeking and what had happened in my childhood to have me seek out these employers that were, and I was just like, and I was just like, oh my God. And I hit my therapist, like, I need a session to process this. I need to, and she was like, yeah, she was like, I love it. We got to integrate, but it was unreal. If you try to skip through the work, then what's the point of even doing it? You don't need a certification. Call yourself a coach. I mean, don't actually. I would hope that you don't. But if you do the work, if you show up for yourself, if you do the modules, do the courses, do the exercise. I got really overwhelmed with required readings and extra readings because there's like 20 books that they recommend. It was just like, I thought I had to read them all, and and then the tests and the quizzes and all this stuff. But if you do the work, it is so life-changing, and you just are peeling back the layers. A lot of people are seeking that level of understanding and healing in the plant medicine spaces. And I understand that. You can do plant medicine, but you also need to process and integrate, and sometimes plant medicine can help with that. But you can also do this the hard way. And I'm not saying that plant medicine is not hard, but sitting with yourself. And I had one of the biggest breakthroughs in my life, and I wasn't in Sedona or Tulum or Bali or Mount Shasta. I was in Seattle in my apartment on my laptop with no facilitator. I didn't have Jim Morrison's breathwork coach with me. I was who I've worked with before. Rest in peace, Bobby Klein. I was sitting with and I was like, that was what screwed me up. I was like, how can I have a breakthrough in this environment, in the studio apartment, like doing a module? Like, how is this happening right now?
Oh my gosh. Our paradigms around where you're supposed to have breakthroughs. It's like robs us from the opportunity of having a breakthrough literally anywhere in your car. I've had breakthroughs in my car. Like sometimes that's my safe space. Like I'll just scream like in my car, or like have the biggest emotional release, or it usually doesn't even happen in spaces where I'm with a bunch of people in a breathwork session.
That's something that I think we could lean into and I love that right now. I'm having a semi breakthrough, is that we could lean into normalizing that you don't have to be in the most expensive, fanciest container at the most exotic place. Those containers are a lot of fun, but you can have a breakthrough in your apartment with yourself with no psychoactive medicine and just be with yourself. Some of the hardest healing I've ever had to do was like by being alone.
Yeah.
On nothing.
Yeah. For me too. For me, it was with my life coaching course with Elementum. That was 9 months. And similarly to the Jay Shetty one, like every week was like breakthrough after breakthrough after breakthrough. I also had happened in that moment to be going through like a huge transitional point in my life, just like in every way. So it was like, it was a rebirth every single week. And it was all happening online on my computer in my place, in my little apartment. And it's like after those 9 months, it's like I literally came out. It almost felt like 9 months, I was like in a womb of just like healing and like getting to know myself and like releasing all these things. And then when the course was done, it's like, okay, world, I'm ready for you. I'm here. It's like, this is me now. Wow. So powerful.
One of the things that I've learned as you're doing these breakthroughs, you're unlearning your programming, your conditioning. And I spent a weekend retreat with the Don Jose Ruiz and Don Miguel Ruiz, the family, the sons of the author of the Four Agreements. And I spent a weekend with them, and they talk a lot about unlearning the conditioning and the programming and stuff like that. It's really powerful stuff. And as you're doing this work, you're getting back to this natural space, this natural intuitive, understanding of who you are and learning how to be and exist and how to heal and grow, and then serve, help others, heal, grow, serve, heal, grow, serve. Like that's the loop I want to be on. And when you're doing that, you're going through this journey of understanding, and you're trying to figure out, where you fit in all this new world, right? And one of the things that I started picking up at the end was because in the 6-month Jay Shetty course, I had so much required reading and homework and everything that if I was watching Netflix, I felt guilty. Like, what am I doing? Why am I watching Stranger Things? I need to be watching. I have study hours. And for study hours, you're allowed to watch any Jay Shetty podcast, any mental health podcast. So I end up towards the end, there's an interview that Jay Shetty does with Will Smith, and he talks about that when he's on the set of these big movies. When he's in his trailer, he's not reading the script and studying the script. He's reading self-help books because he's stacking. So Jay Shetty and Will Smith both talk about the in-between moments. What are you choosing to do with your life in the in-between moments? And that blew me away. So are you continuing to foster and learn spiritually, emotionally, any of these things? You could be learning about nutrition or mental health or emotional intelligence or spirituality, all of these things. Or are you consuming more programming and conditioning, seeking more escape and dopamine? Because I'm not going to lie, when I watch Stranger Things, I'm just picking on Stranger Things. If you watch something on Netflix, it releases a dopamine. It takes you away from your reality. It pulls you in. And it's the same thing as going to a music festival and taking some pills or something like that. You're seeking a connection with this character, with this show. And I love the arts and I love that. But I find myself now, having pulled back some of that conditioning and programming, I feel guilty. And I know that I should be putting something in my mind that is going to heal me and help me, or that I can use to be a better human being.
Man, I relate to this so much. This was even before I did my life coaching certificate and all of that, when I was just like deep into personal development when I first started. And I was just like reading all the books and meditating every single day. And like my schedule was like all filled with like healing. And I remember one night I was I was like, you know what? I want to watch something on Netflix. But I had this book on my bed next to me, my computer in front of me, watching something on Netflix. And I had this feeling of guilt, like just a wave of guilt. And I'm like, oh, what am I doing? I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be watching Netflix. But then I had a moment where I was like, wait a second. Like, it's okay actually for me to watch Netflix right now. There's also this addiction with healing that people get into, and I notice myself getting into it. It's literally it's like you're replacing the addiction with all these other things with now an addiction with like to healing. So that was a moment for me where I was like, okay, in this moment, what actually will benefit me is sitting here and watching this show that I want to watch. I've been reading, I've been meditating all day. It's okay for me to let go for a little bit, and I'm doing it consciously in this moment. It's not like before when I would sit down and watch TV and like do it because I want to forget about my life. I'm actually just consciously enjoying this and not going to let myself fully indulge for hours and hours and hours. So like while there is the guilt and it still comes up like many times, I'm also like, okay, my entire life is literally all of this healing work. It's okay for me also to like let myself go for a little bit or listen to a podcast about something totally random because my entire day has been filled with all this other healing stuff.
So so you admit that you're listening to murder podcasts and true crime? No, I'm just kidding.
I
I know
admit
those
that
are
I
like
listen to.
those are like the most popular ones where like everyone comes together and they get all the evidence and they're trying to
Yeah,
figure out.
I actually haven't watched those.
Yeah, me neither. But
Yeah,
I know. But if you go to like the top podcasts,
yeah.
except for like Joe Rogan, it's always like
Huh? What does that tell you?
murder well, societies can obsess. Well, it's the same thing with like the most popular TV shows, and then
Right.
all of a sudden everybody gets together, creates a Facebook group or a Reddit page, and then
Yeah,
they share evidence and they solve the crime. Oh, we all watch Netflix, and it's armchair detectives.
that is so funny. Oh my gosh. But yeah, no, I totally get it. And like while the I do understand and totally feel like everything that you put in your mind is affecting how you view the world. Like literally everything. Even a little show that you think might not be harming you in any way. I actually notice I do feel drained after watching a show, a certain show, or like 2 episodes of a show. And I'm like, oh my God, I feel so drained. I could have done this, XYZ. And I would have felt really like good right now. Where I wake up in the morning feeling like shit because I watched a show in the middle of the night. And then I'm like, why did I do that? You know? But I think it's like, it's just so easy because it's the comfortable thing to do. And it's what we're all so used to doing is like turning on the TV and doing that or going out and partying with your friends. It's the familiar. It's what's familiar, the familiar comfort.
Yeah, absolutely. No,
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Okay, I have a question about also through your coaching program, something that you learned about yourself, and it's how did going through that coaching program shift the way you saw the work that you had been doing, even like with when the music stops and all the things. Like, did that at all impact like how you saw what you were doing?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. So many people. So when I found true suicide prevention through listening and not giving others advice, I used to justify giving people advice if they asked for it. And life coaching teaches you not to give people advice if they ask for it.
Mm-hmm.
So the
Mm-hmm.
biggest thing is unlearning giving someone the answer to their own life and
Mm-hmm.
instead holding space,
Mm-hmm.
listening, they re-emphasize that, which I already had started that journey. But then this is the biggest thing. So I saw this video on how to be the most powerful life coach. And it was rule number one was be present. Don't take a lot of notes. Just be there.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Mm-hmm.
be there. Be present. Number two was listen. And, kind of a combination. Be present, listen. And then
Mm-hmm.
number three was be curious.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you are curious, you're going to ask the right questions. So if somebody is telling you about their life, if you ask a curious question, it's naturally going to send them back to think. And so in that process of thinking, it's not NLP or manipulation, but in that
Right.
process of thinking, they might have an epiphany or a breakthrough. If you ask the right question with
Yeah.
no agenda, you see this person as whole and complete, and they do not need to be fixed. And you know that they already have their own answers. And if you're just a curious listener, then that's when the magic happens. And the second I started doing that, breakthrough started happening. And so it took what I already knew. And so now I know that if somebody's asking me about mental health or suicide prevention, yes, I can help share some of the knowledge I've learned, and there's nothing wrong with that. But is there a situation or a scenario where I can empower them by asking them questions? And that is where the magic can happen.
That is so powerful. I can't tell you how many times in my coaching containers, just asking one powerful question will send somebody, like you just said, like into this loop of like rethinking all these things that takes them into a huge breakthrough just by asking a question instead of like giving somebody the answer, because it makes them have to go through their own process of thinking about it. If you just tell it to them, it's like, it's not going to hit deep. Like when you ask it, it's like it has to go through every cell in their body to like transmute into an answer. Yeah.
Speaking of hitting deep, number 4 on that list, this one was so hard for me in the beginning, is when your client stops speaking, be quiet and count to 5 or 10.
That was hard for me.
90% of the time, they will keep talking, which they need to.
Yeah.
And so that was hard for me. And I did it on a call last night, not with a client, with a dear friend, with a musician who I'm helping manage. And he told me something really powerful, and I didn't say anything for like 20 seconds. And we just sat there for a second. And when I was taught this, they said it's going to be really uncomfortable, but you got to sit with it. And he goes, "Are you there?" Last night. I said, "Yeah." He goes, "What's up?" I said, "I was just sitting with what you said." And he goes, "Whoa." He goes, "I felt it." And I was like, "Yeah, me too." And so once we release the expectation that we are supposed to say something immediately, we allow space in the container of connection for something special to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely. That was hard for me. It's hard for me to hold, to like stay with those moments of silence. That's been for me in my coaching practice like the hardest part, because I'm just like, I just want to say something now. It's
That's
quiet.
because we have that energy. We're
Yeah.
excited.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. So Joshua, what does your journey, your path to alignment look like now as you've embarked on this coaching journey? You'd already been coaching for a while, just not like, I don't know, officially a coach out into the world, out in the open. So what does your path to alignment look like now?
I love that question. Thank you for asking. Leaning into my voice and understanding that all of my life experiences can help inspire others, and by speaking up more. Even though we're talking a lot about listening, it takes people like you and I to be vocal on our platforms, because there's a lot of people out there seeking community, connection, impact, inspiration. And yeah, there's a lot of people on Instagram, but the more people that speak up, the more people that we can heal and impact. Not that it's our job to heal everyone, but the more people that we can help, and the more people that we can serve. So for me, it's finding my voice. I think that I'm still torn on my coaching niche, but I I love working with creatives, but I
Mhm.
don't want to limit that to only
Yeah.
creatives. I want
Yeah.
to be able to work with everyone.
Mhm.
And I think that, for me, I can do spirituality, but
Mhm.
it's helping people find their purpose. It's helping people identify the habits to achieve their
Mhm.
goals and dreams. It's helping people believe in themselves by believing in them and helping
Mhm.
empower others. My goal is to have a positive impact on 1 million lives before September 29th, 2029.
Mhm.
And it's funny because as soon as I put that out there, so many people messaged me 999,999 to go. So many people. And
Oh my
so,
gosh.
yeah, it's a really, really, really special thing and people want to be taken off that, and acknowledge I'm on that list. And you never know. The majority of people who we will impact their lives will never speak up to us, just
Mhm.
like the majority of people that are having suicidal thoughts aren't going to reach out. It's the same thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's that follower in your stories at the bottom who has never liked one of your posts, who's never messaged you ever once, but who watches every single story on your
Wow.
page. And it's that person that you might be impacting more than you'll ever know, and they may never tell you. And as long as you remove that expectation of needing that like or that message to validate
Mhm.
what you're saying, and you keep leaning into your authenticity and your purpose, that's what I believe the path to alignment looks like to me.
Oh, that was so beautiful. Yes, and I think so many people give up because they don't get the validation of the person reaching out, or like I'll even say for myself, like with the podcast, I stopped for a while, and it wasn't until people were like telling me like, "Oh my gosh, I listened to your podcast." Like there was this part of me that was thinking like nobody's listening. And then I would go to like a yoga event or something, and someone would come up and be like, "I listened to your podcast. I love it." I'm like, "What, you listen to my podcast? Like what? I didn't even know you. This is amazing." Like, so it's like understanding that the purpose is so much bigger and that it's unseen. And I think that's where we have to lean so much into trust, because it's unseen. You don't know how many people you're impacting. Like you probably have already impacted a million people and you don't even know it because they didn't tell you personally.
Yeah, I've had a few people tell me, "Oh, I mean, easily 500,000," and it just cracks me up. But the thing is, though, is that for me, the way that I'm taught how to help people set their goals, Jay
Mhm.
Shetty and like everyone we're taught in these courses, is to be specific
Mhm.
and measurable.
Mhm.
And so once I took that and applied it, I was like, oh, okay, so be specific. 1 million lives. I don't have any children currently. I don't have a wife. Hopefully, I'll have both someday.
Mhm.
And so I need to have that North Star,
Mhm.
because I've had money before and it didn't make me happy. Money's great, but it doesn't make you happy. So,
Mhm.
what are you building towards? We
Mhm.
spoke offline before we started recording. I have
Mhm.
a dream. My goal, my North Star, is impact 1 million lives.
Mhm.
But I have a goal of, I would love to have a retreat in Joshua Tree, like a
Mhm.
healing place, like
Yep.
a 3 or 4 bedroom house with cold plunges and red saunas and infrared saunas and maybe some workout and stuff, and where you can do
Mhm.
intensive life coaching. You can do intensive work,
Mhm.
breakthroughs, all this stuff, but with a recording studio as well. So you could work with creatives, you could work with singers,
Mhm.
songwriters, musicians,
Ugh,
have breakthroughs, and then record immediately. And so that's one of my goals. I
amazing.
really, really would love to get to the point where I have this, I don't know what it would be called, but have this healing center for
Mhm.
intensive work. And you could do retreats of 12 people, but it's really going to be designed for those intimate containers of
Mhm.
one-on-one or one-on-three or one-on-four. Maybe it's a
Mhm.
coach and a band, kind of like
Yeah.
Rick Rick Rubin's Shangri-La out studios out in Malibu. It's something similar to that, but my version in
Yeah.
Joshua Tree.
Oh my gosh.
And then if I'm making, let's say that we're charging the record labels and all these things, right? And the label is baking in the price, and they're, so now with a little bit of a cushion, I can then do pro bono clients. I could do clients that are low income. I could take somebody
Beautiful.
who is a low income musician or creative or artist and say, hey, I've got a $5,000 retreat package that I'm donating to you. Come work with me. Come be in the studio. Come do the cold plunges. Come do all the things. Come get the healing of the people that have a budget get to, because it's really important to me to make sure that I find a way to take everything that I'm learning, whether it's life coaching, whether, whatever it is, and make sure that we're healing all different economic classes, because we all need the healing. And there's a lot of gatekeeping around the healing wellness spaces and rooms that are really expensive.
Yeah.
I think that maybe even you and I might struggle sometimes to pay for a retreat or a course that we want to go on, or we want to take, or we want to do. And we're probably better off than a lot of people. And so how do you have a trickle down effect? And how do you make sure that somebody with no income or low income is able to get the same exact experience as somebody with all the money?
Yeah. I cannot wait to see your journey, your evolution. I just know, like, you are someone, just from me speaking with you for the past few hours, that like you say something and you make it happen. And your mind just works in such magical ways, where it's like always thinking about like, how can I create something out of this? Like, even like what's still baffling me is earlier when you were talking about your suicide story, that right after it's like, I'm going to create something out of this. Like, you're always in like creative mode. Have you always been this way?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm very high functioning. I was self-aware at a young age. I came from a low income family, but I never had doubt until my suicide attempt, never in my life. So I never went to college and was recruited for every job I ever had, because I never had doubt in myself. And I was advisors to billionaires and musicians and flown around the world and had done all the things because I just knew that I could. Like, it just was inside of me, like, do it. And I could see the world as this zeros and ones matrix, and I could just kind of see in between the lines. It's a difficult thing to have a high functioning brain and understand how to just be, or not being able to create, and how to survive in the world where, somebody says, oh, why don't you just get a normal job? And you're just like, I'm not better than that, but maybe I survived death for something bigger, for a bigger purpose. And I don't know. I don't want to attach altruism, but and then what's funny is I didn't know much about human design, but last year somebody did my human design, and they've been doing it for years. And they were like, wait a minute, did you know that you're a manifester? And I'm like, oh yeah, I believe it. And they're like, no, like, you're a human design manifester. There's only 8% of the world's population. And I was like, oh, okay. And I'm looking into that, and I was like, oh, wow. And it's like, you read it, it's so wild. It's like reading about the human design manifester. It's like, you were put on earth to create something out of nothing. And it says that, like, everybody, all the other ones need people or things or community, but the manifester can just, and it's funny because I might not believe in something like that, but then I read it and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. That's true. And you don't think about it. The magic happens when you don't think about it. So do you remember the book or the movie, The Secret?
The book. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it was also a movie too, but and it's about manifesting. It was one of the early books about manifesting and stuff. And so I watched the movie documentary and read it many years ago when it came out, and was like, wait a minute, I've been doing that my whole life. That's what that's called. Like, nobody ever taught me I would
Oh
just think
my
about something. When I was in high school, I had a photo on my wall of Hong Kong. I used to watch these Hong Kong action films, these like Chinese action movies.
gosh.
And I had a photo of Hong Kong, and this is before the internet, before social media. So
Uh-huh.
we had to either picture things in our minds, or we had to watch a movie and be like, oh wow, look at that place. You know what I mean? Like no one knew, what Dubai
Right.
was or anything like that.
Wow.
And so, the only way that we knew about Saudi Arabia is by like watching Lawrence of Arabia, or like watching Gladiator to learn about Rome. So I had
Gosh.
this photo of Hong Kong at night. I had other
Mm.
photos of Los Angeles, New York as well, and
Mhm.
I lived in a low income part of town with a single mom, and before I was 20, I'd been paid to go to all those places. Yeah, before I was 20 years old, I'd been paid to go to Hong Kong with a musician, and like
Mind blowing.
everyone, no one in my city had been to Hong Kong. And like, I was like, oh yeah, I'm there. Like, whoop, Hong Kong this weekend. Like, let's do it, And
Gosh.
so, but nobody ever taught me. No one ever told me what manifesting was, or alchemy, or I didn't know what any of those
Mhm.
words meant. I had no idea. It was just inside of
Yeah.
me. I focused on something, thought about it, did it. There was no book taught me that.
Yeah.
No one said anything. No one's parents told me how to do this. Nothing. It
Mhm.
was just that. And then now my problem is I overthink it. So
Mm.
now I watch all the Instagrams, all the TikToks, watch all the YouTube videos on manifesting each day, and writing it 10 times and 3
Yeah.
times and 6 times and 9 times, and this journal and that journal, and think it this time, and
Mm.
this visualization and this. And the magic is struggling, because before it was just belief and
Right.
straight creation. And
Yeah.
now it's overthinking the process. Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? And I know how to let go, but in the subconscious mind is still like, wait a minute, are we doing it the way that they said how to do it in the TikTok video? And that's when it doesn't happen.
Oh my gosh. This is so, I've never heard someone talk about this in this way, because this is the hype now, is like how to manifest, like become the ultimate manifester. There's coaches that teach about manifestation work. And it's, I guess, for people that haven't tapped into their manifestation skills. But for someone, it's like you're going reverse. Like you already had the manifestation abilities and you were so tapped
Yeah,
in without even knowing it. But then it's like once you find out, then you try to like put logic into it and put it into
correct.
this box.
Correct.
Hmm.
Yes. Knowing being taught the tactic, the technique of manifesting or creating,
Mhm.
and trying to do it that way,
Mm.
something gets lost in translation, versus not knowing that alchemy or transmutation or manifesting is even a thing, and just creating, just seeing the world with no boundaries. And that
Mm.
was the way it was for me. Money, I was like, oh, we don't have any money. All right, that's okay. Keep working, work hard, like figure it out. Like, you know what I mean? And it
Yeah.
was like, people in my town wanted to get married, have kids, get a house, and I
Hmm.
love all those things. I want to do all those things now, but I was like, oh no, I want to travel the world, be with
Hmm.
musicians, and go everywhere. And I did all of those things, and
Mm.
so I learned a lot of beautiful lessons, saw a lot of great parts of the world. But right now, it's about getting back to the innocence of creation.
Mm. Mm. What does that mean for you?
That's an excellent question. Um, I don't know. I think I watched a Diary of a CEO podcast yesterday, 2 days ago, and this gentleman was talking about, he believes in this. The guest was talking about how purpose for him is when origin story, mission, and vision all align.
Mm.
Or origin being, what have you been through in your life? Mission
Mhm.
being, what am I doing right now? And vision
Mm.
being, where do I want to go in 5 years? And when
Mm.
they all
Mm.
align, they
Yeah.
equal your purpose. Um, yeah, I think it's getting back to feeling, because the one thing that we always see in these videos is like, you have to feel it. You have to feel it. You have to feel it. Trust me, I've been feeling it for the last 4 or 5 years. But when the music stops, I took away the expectation and I just did it, just created, just went forward. It's time to save lives. And we're going to do it in a different way. Go. No doubt. Just go. Trial and error. Figure it out. Learn.
Yes. Innocence of creation. The innocence of creation, just almost like just doing without the expectation, and like with innocence, creating with innocence, without all this like, how much money am I going to make from this? How many people am I going to actually reach? How many people are going to come to this? Like just the innocence of the creation, where you just create from a place of just true connection. Like you're not trying to get anything out of it, but it's just like, it's just happening.
Creating from a place of imagination. Because when we were young, we needed to read books and listen to music for inspiration. Music was about telling story. The greatest songs were emotion captured in a song. So often you can listen to a song, and when it gets really powerful is when there's it used to be like movie soundtracks that would sell millions and millions of copies because they'd lock in that moment. So a moment of visualization with music does something in the back of your brain. For the rest of your life, you can play that song and take you straight back there to where you're crying, or you create emotion, or it got you through that breakup, or whatever that was. And so we're overstimulated now with social media, with media in general, we know more about wars and war crimes. I'm not trying to be specific or political right now, but we know more about the atrocities that are happening in the world than we ever have before. And the human brain we weren't designed to know all of it at once. So in all of history, you would hear about wars and famines and these atrocities that happened, but you wouldn't hear about all of them at the same exact time. And I mean, like, what's happening in Venezuela, what's happening in Iraq, what's happening, all these different places at once, because then it's overwhelming. And I'm not just trying to focus on that. It's the same thing with, movies and music and TV shows. And like all of these programs are designed to capture the attention of the subconscious mind to get us to either buy or consume or watch. You know what I mean? Because they know if they can get you to watch and there's some subconscious Taco Bell in there, there's a high chance that you're going to buy Taco Bell in the next 30 days because you saw it in this, while the character's driving by a Taco Bell in this show that you're locked into with this beautiful song playing in the background. So your mind is now subconsciously locking into this Taco Bell with this music, and this emotion is created and attached, and then subconsciously you drive by, you see the ad, and you're like, oh, I'm thinking about a taco right now, and you have no idea why. And I'm using that as an example, but we're losing the creation, the magic of manifestation and creation, because we're being overstimulated and overprogrammed and overconditioned. We're going through a spiritual renaissance, but at the same time, we're being overprogrammed and conditioned to consume and watch and more than we ever have.
Man, that's a whole podcast episode just talking about that topic. Yeah. My goodness. Wow. Okay. So we're getting back into the innocence of creation. That's the path to alignment for Joshua moving forward.
Absolutely.
I love that so much. So Joshua, before we wrap up today, is there anything that you want to share that's like on your heart, or anything that's been super present for you that you think would really benefit someone or a million people?
Yes, of course. For some reason in the last 6 months, more human beings that I've talked to or that I know in my life are going through more than they've ever gone before. Everyone. And I don't know what is happening or why it's happening, but I know deep inside of me that it's going to be okay. Even if, I've got friends that are struggling with cancer right now that are in the hospital, and like, there's a lot, but they're, check on your friends and family, and try to limit your time on social media. And the next time somebody opens up to you, if you have the capacity and they're not trauma dumping, just hold space and listen, and don't give them advice, and count to 10 after they're done speaking.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that. Thank you for that. I'm so happy that we finally got this episode done. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been such an honor to have you. And like I said, from the moment that I saw you, it was just like, I need to know him. I need to talk to him. I need to I don't know, something there just needs to be a connection. And I don't know, it was one of those things where your gut just tells you this is a person that you want to meet. This is a person that we were talking about, I think it was before the podcast, when you meet somebody and when you are tapped into your own intuition and what you want in your life, that's somebody that I want to talk to. That's somebody that I don't. And there's nothing wrong with that. We're not going to resonate with every single person in this life. And that's the beauty of life, that if we were to resonate with everybody, there would be no conflict resolution. There has to be a little bit of duality. So I don't know. There was just something really beautiful about having you there. And I admire so much what you're doing and what you continue to do, and starting when the music stops, and then whatever you're going to start next and continue to create, I think is going to be just such a beautiful offering to the world. So it's truly an honor to know you and to know somebody who has done so many beautiful things in this life and who has turned pain into so much purpose. Thank you for existing.
Thank you for creating this container for me to be heard and feel heard today, and to be able to share ideas and energy with you.
For sure. Joshua, is there anything that you want to say to people about how they can find you or your coaching services? Anything
Yes, I'm still working on my website, but you can message me or email me, josh@whenthemusicstops.org. And my Instagram is either @whenthemusicstops or @Joshua C. Donaldson. And I'm around, and reach out and, stay positive and try to find yourself in the loop of healing, growing, serving.
Love it. Okay. Yes. Thank you so much, Joshua.
Thank you.